as you meet all of the people who aren't the one, and you go on this little roller coaster of getting attached and falling in love maybe, or strong attraction, and then it doesn't work out for one reason or another. And at some point along the journey, I have this thing which I teach called the compatibility assessment, when you really like the person and they really like from you. And actually, I'll let you in on a secret. This is an idea I got from American Christians who I realized before, and I don't know if it's across the whole states or whatever, but it's certainly, it's present, PreMarital Questionnaire. Mm-hmm. So, okay, you think you found the one, great. Let's make sure you want to live in the same continent. Let's see if you want to have kids. Let's see what religion or tradition you want them raised. Like, let's have those conversations. Now this is really important. And in my younger years, I was really resistant to those kinds of questions. I was like, no, I'm in love. I want to, and by the way, I also got married really young and then got divorced, right? Having not answered any of these questions or thinking any of these things through, right? So I didn't want to make that mistake again. But the idea is you're going to need resilience along the way as you're seeing people, but you might actually fall for someone and be talking with them. But then you kind of have the mature conversation, the compatibility assessment, the premarital questionnaire, whatever you want to call it, where you ask the big questions. And there are two things here. Number one is it's really important that each person just answers these questions really honestly for themselves, irrespective of how your partner answers them. And it's almost better that you kind of write them down and don't know how your partner responds, right? Just so you can have a really honest conversation. The second thing is not everything has to match up for you to, for you to get married and have a long-term relationship, but you've got to acknowledge where you don't match up. Right? For me and Rashida, she is a Dutch Moroccan, right? So she's, her parents are from Morocco, but she was brought up in the Netherlands. Her ideal place to live is Rotterdam. I'm a British Pakistani. My parents are from Pakistan. I grew up in the UK. Rotterdam isn't on my top 10 places to live, right? It certainly wasn't when we met. I was like, I'd rather live in like San Diego or, Japan. They're higher on my list, right? So we had to just have this honest conversation. Like, you want that, I want this. Now, there was a risk at that point that it wouldn't work out and it would be another heartbreak for both of us. But because we both answered really honestly, we got to the point where we were like, well, hang on a second. How important is living where you ideally want versus being with the person you really want? Like, is it like, am I so attached to the location I live that I could never live in Rotterdam? And the truth is, the answer to that is no. I'm an online entrepreneur. I can live anywhere in the world. Let's be honest.
Right.
And Rashida, funnily enough, had the same response. She also was a freelancer and can live anywhere. So it was kind of like, for some people that would be a deal breaker, but for us, it wasn't. We both had deal breakers, but not with each other. Right. So one of her deal breakers was a smoker. I'm like, well, I have no interest in smoking, and I don't think that's ever going to be. So it's kind of like, it worked out that way. But resilience, that's another key.
Yeah, I think that's a key too, because whether you describe it as we have things to learn, which I think is often true. My husband and I talked about that after we met each other, that everything kind of made sense that led up to that, even though it didn't while we were going through it. In retrospect and hindsight, we could see how all of the experiences we both had with other people and dating and that sort of thing had really given us clarity and vision and experiences that helped prepare us for each other. And I also believe, Mamoon, for me, finding the right person was also a spiritual journey that involved the divine. And I also believe sometimes when we set an intention like this, we set an intention or we have a clear vision of what we really want and desire. And then we kind of like ask God and kind of turn that over to him. I think we are sometimes tested. Like, I think we're tested to see, okay, are you gonna continue to trust in the abundance and in the grace that will allow you to have this in your life? Or are you going to try to take the reins and control? I mean, I know for me, that was something where I wanted to take the reins and control. I wanted to be in charge because that worked in other aspects of my life. Right. And so I think all of these things that we're talking about really go together, and whatever spiritual tradition or religious tradition people are coming from, I think the things we're talking about are really, really important. And then having the clarity about, you said you both had deal breakers, just not with each other. Same thing with my husband and I. I do think understanding something about each other's values, what's important to you, and being unafraid to have those conversations where you even risk having a breakdown or breakup are really, it takes courage, it takes faith, but that's how you really find out whether or not long term it's going to be a compatible situation that's going to bless both of your lives, rather than being fraught with a lot of conflict, misunderstanding, and unmet expectations.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Should we take this a bit deeper? Okay. Here's one of the real keys that I only really discovered after coaching like a lot of people, right? There's a pattern we go through. And it's like we can be resilient, and resilience is required for this journey, right? It's like
absolutely
you're gonna have ups and downs, you're going to have roller coasters. What I found happened is that as I was coaching people, they would develop resilience. They would develop like the main thing that I share, the psychological switch. It's the realization that feeling always comes from thought in the moment. And it's very tempting to believe I'll be happy when I finally get married to the one. I'll feel loved when I'm with the right person. And the fact of the matter is, we feel happy the moment we start to think happy. We feel loved the moment we start to realize we are loved by the divine, right? And by the whole universe, right? Thought can change, like our feelings change at the speed of thought, right? So what happens is when this realization really sinks in, resilience develops, because all of a sudden you're not so attached to any particular person because you know they're not causing your feelings in reality. You're also not attached to a certain outcome. That was the second thing, right? It's like, oh, I've got to be with that person. Well, you can kind of develop this healthy detachment from the outcome. So all of these things start to, and now you can hold the intention of the optimal spouse and really live it. Now, what I discovered happened was when people would get this understanding, when they would really realize, wow, my felt experience of life doesn't come from my circumstances. It doesn't come from the stories I've held onto in the past. It comes from the present moment and what I'm thinking in the present moment. When people really start developing this, we become incredibly resilient. Now, we'll still go through the ups and downs. We'll still have times when I'm sad and upset and heartbroken, but there is a huge difference being heartbroken and thinking I'm upset because it broke off versus being heartbroken and realizing I'm upset because I'm thinking in an upset way about the breakup. It seems like the same, right? But there's a world of difference between the two. Because if you realize I'm upset because I'm thinking about the whole thing in an upset way, then you know for certain it can change at the speed of thought. 10 minutes later, you might feel differently. 1 hour later, you might feel differently. And if you think I feel upset because of the breakup, the only way to stop feeling upset, please will you take me back? Oh my God, I've got to find another person. Oh my gosh, somebody's got to take this pain away. You start running and becoming needy and weird. And that's where all the mistakes get made, is in that zone of like, I'm heartbroken and upset. Let me fix it now by reaching out to the person that I've broken up with, or quickly going on all these apps and finding someone who I can just immediately have a relationship with. That's where all the mistakes happen. So that's one phase, right? I realize something else happens when people really go deep with this understanding, and they realize that, now I'm not saying, by the way, that we can control our feelings, right? Because if I knew a way you could 100% of the time control your feelings, I'd be selling it to you in a pill and I'd be a very rich man, right? I'm not saying we control it. We're still going to be upset sometimes and angry sometimes and full of love and happiness and joy at other times. What I'm saying is, let's not fall for the illusion that it's the circumstances of our lives that have more power than our own thinking, right? because that's the trick. That's the illusion. For me, that's the great spiritual illusion, is the illusion that our circumstances determine our feelings, right? Now, when people really get this, one phase is they become more resilient. The next phase is people would, like my clients, men and women who I take through this process, they would start to kind of just become a lot more happy. Because when you realize, wow, my happiness and how loved I feel isn't determined by my circumstances, well, I can be single and totally, utterly happy with life. And then people are like, well, I don't even need a spouse. I'm good, right? And like, if they really get this insight on a deep level, it's true. You can be totally happy, totally single, and live your best life, and all is good. And when you're in that high energy, this is the key, okay? I had a lot of clients who, when they were in that high energy, they didn't want to do the things required to find a spouse because they feel like, well, I don't need it because I'm totally happy. And I was like, dude, you have no idea how attractive you are right now. What we do is, when we're down in the dumps and we're facing heartbreak, we're feeling upset, we're feeling lonely, then we're like, let me pull my phone out and go on the apps and find a partner. And that's when your energy is the lowest and you're the most needy and in the worst possible place to go find a partner.
I know. And isn't it amazing how that energy comes across without us even realizing it or meaning for it to?
Completely. It's unspoken. It's not like, what did I write that was incorrect in this text? It's like, no, it's like there were things in the text, but it's more like everything about you right now is giving the wrong signals, right? But now that same person, when they're genuinely happy, genuinely feel loved, genuinely confident, not fake it till you make it confident, but like feels really comfortable and confident in their own skin. Well, now all of a sudden you're super attractive. The only thing you've got to do now is show up. And that little distinction of basically stop trying to desperately, needily show up when you're feeling down. And when you're feeling great because of the personal growth that you've been through, when you're feeling awesome, you're feeling spiritual, you're feeling connected, that's when you show up. And when I say show up, I just mean literally go where the people are, go where the men are. Now you go on the dating app. Now you go to the networking event or the social engagement, whatever it is.